Everyone's attention, particularly members of the King County Council's Law and Justice Committee. My name is Larry Gossett, and I have the privilege of being the chair of our esteemed committee this year, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our Tuesday, June 12th meeting. If you are new to the County Council meetings, there are agendas and materials supporting each of the agenda items that we plan to cover on this afternoon available to you on the table to your right. There's also a sign-up sheet should there be anyone that would like to provide public input, which we in this subcommittee of the County Council allow for, as long as your testimony is directly to the items we have on the agenda this afternoon. With that background, I'd like to turn to our committee clerk and ask her to call the roll.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunn, Councilmember Cole-Wells.
Here.
Councilmember Lambert.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
Mr. Chair.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a quorum, so we shall proceed. Councilmember Lambert,
Yes, sir.
would you mind
I'm ready.
and be so kind as to do the minutes of our last meeting?
I'm ready. Thank you. I'd like to move the minutes of May 22nd, 2018 as written.
Thank you. It's been moved that our committee adopt its minutes from the last meeting, which, as Councilmember Lambert indicated, was on May 22nd. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections on those minutes? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to adopting the minutes say no. The ayes have it. The minutes are properly adopted. Now we come to item 4 on our agenda, which is public input. As I said a little earlier, we are one of the committees that allows for public input. Each person that would like to talk can go to either one of these two podiums, and you will have up to 2 minutes. We simply ask that your comments be relevant to the items that we're covering this afternoon, and that you keep your remarks within 2 minutes. There's a machine at the top of each podium that will let you know how much time you have left. And with that background, I'm going to grab the sign-up list that I currently have, and it indicates that only one person has signed up. His name is Alex Zimmerman, and after Mr. Zimmerman testifies, I'll ask if there are others that desire to do so. Mr. Zimmerman, could you go to the podium, sir? That's so nice of you.
Heil, my dirty double Führer, a Nazi social democratic mafia with progressive Gestapo principle. My name is Alex Zimmerman, I'm president of Stand Up America. I want to speak about agenda number 8. Agenda number 10 is package what is go together. We have a fascism in this city, and every percent of Seattle right now, people recognize this. This fascism more dangerous than Hitler or Stalin fascism, because Nazi and communists have this in constitution, change constitution. We have constitution for 250 years, freedom of speech and common sense, supposed to be. I don't see this common sense in judicial system. Judicial system, what is exist in us, and I have experience for 30 years, I'm 100 times in court, twice prosecute me for 2 my class action. It's a pure Nazi Gestapo mentality. Or communist KGB. We have corrupt to the bonds system because it's council. Like council gossip, because it's for 25 years, don't doing nothing for changes. Is this a problem what is we have right now? We have a one-party system, all judges, all prosecutors working together, make money from us, suck blood and money from us. It's a system what is we have. 100% criminal cases guilty, About you talking about? I come to this place 1,600 times and talk, guys, you more dangerous than Nazi or communist. You are criminal, a bandita, a racketeer, and killer. Is this exactly what is our judicial system working? No one on his judge's system for 30 years. What is I come? Never. Working like one-party system. So I speak right now to everybody who listen to me. We need to stop in this crook, this Nazi social democrat mafia who suck blood and money from us, a billion.
Now, I hope Mr. Zimmerman didn't scare anybody away. Is there any other person in the audience that would like to address the Law and Justice Committee? Seeing none, we're going to close public input at this time. And I'd like to draw members' attentions to items 5, 6, and 7 on this afternoon's calendar. All of these are motions where we're considering people who the executive is asking us to consider confirming their appointments to the Emergency Management Advisory Committee that exists here in King County. And this is a committee that advises the county on emergency management matters and helps coordinate regional emergency planning. As most people in the audience and most people, we have about, on average, 16,000 to 18,000 people that watch our meetings via King County TV. And most of them know that emergency management is very important for our region of the country, but for every region of the country, because we never know when a disaster or something's going to happen, and we want to be as prepared as anyone else. So we are happy that we're considering all of you on this afternoon. We have the highly esteemed staff person, Lisa Kay, who is going to who's going to start off this part of our agenda by describing to us who the candidates are we're going to consider. Lisa. And I wanted to announce that I believe this may be Lisa's last committee member. She's taken a job in another jurisdiction that's going to provide her with wider responsibilities. We're going to miss you, Lisa. We will not be able to fill your shoes, but we wish you well in all your future endeavors. Proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I am Lisa Kay, Council staff. I'm joined today by Ms. Pelaez, Mr. Root, and Ms. Dombrowski. And Barnaby Dow from the Office of Emergency Management is in the audience and is available for questions, and he will come to the podium if you have questions.
All right.
For the executive. With the chair's permission, I'll go over the three motions and introduce all three appointees prior to questions from the committee, if that meets with your approval, sir.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so my staff report all three staff reports begin on page 9 of your packet for Ms. Pelaez's confirmation, page 17 for Mr. Root, and page 27 for Ms. Dombrowski. I am mispronouncing that, Ms. Dombrowski. Thank you.
As long as it's not Dombrowski.
Well, you can see my confusion.
We have a Dombrowski that's a member of the King County Council, and you don't know that him. Okay, good.
I
Go ahead.
apologize. I would note that 2 of the motions that are before you today will require technical amendments that I'll describe later in my report.
All right.
Okay.
Fine.
As you mentioned, each of these individuals is being appointed to the Emergency Management Advisory Committee. The members of that committee do serve without compensation. The first motion before you is proposed motion 2018-0234, which would confirm the executive's appointment of Ms. Susan Pelaez, who works in Council District 8 as the alternate representative of the Northwest Healthcare Response Network. Her term will expire on December 31st, 2019. Ms. Pelaez is the Director of Preparedness and Response for the Northwest Healthcare Response Network. She has over 20 years' experience in emergency management and previously represented the American Red Cross on the EMAC committee. Amendment 1 on page 13 of your packet.
Wait a minute. She's been on the committee before.
Representing the American Red Cross.
All right. Thank you.
Amendment 1 on page 13 of your packet would replace Ms. Pelaez's financial disclosure statement with a 2018 form. She had been given a 2016 form version of the form to complete. So this is a technical amendment to update that. Second, proposed motion 2018-0237 would confirm the executive's appointment of Mr. Joseph Root, who resides in Council District 6, as the representative of a local emergency planning committee for a partial term ending December 31st, 2020. Mr. Root is a program manager in the Emergency Management Division of the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority in Kent. His work with the authority includes 8 years' experience as a hazardous materials technician, and he is the chair of the Kent Local Emergency Planning Committee. This motion also has an amendment, actually has one amendment and a title amendment that would correctly identify Mr. Root's place of employment as in District 5.
His place of employment.
Yes, so he works in District 5.
All right, thank you.
And then title amendment 1 would conform the title to the line amendment that's before you.
All right.
As we go through these, I'll note that again for you if it would be helpful.
Yes, it would be.
So finally, the third motion before you is proposed motion 2018-0238, which would confirm the executive's appointment of Andrea Dombrowski, who resides in Council District 9 as the representative of the Puget Sound Educational Services District for a partial term ending December 31st, 2018. Ms. Dombrowski is the Director of Operations and Safety for the Puget Sound Educational District. And that completes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that nice report on our three candidates. As I said a little earlier, you're being considered because you've been recommended to us by our King County Executive to serve on our Emergency Management Advisory Committee. It's very, very important. I really don't have all the words to explain how important this body is to making sure we are prepared as best we can be. People oftentimes talk about how rich and Seattle and King County are, but wealth and all these other things don't mean that much if we're not able to put this together in a coordinated fashion when and if emergencies happen. And it's people like you all that make us ready and prepared. So with that background, it's important that we learn a little bit about each of you. So I'm just going to begin the questioning by asking each of you to tell us a little bit about what your understanding of why you were recommended to this body for service to our broad King County community, and what is it, experience and skill and energy-wise, that you think you'll bring to the advisory committee? And we'll start. I want to make sure, though, that our names are pronounced right. So, Susan, I'm going to start by having you tell us your name again.
Sure, thank you. My name is Susan Pelias.
Pelias.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and who is it that you're representing, being considered to represent?
The Northwest Healthcare Response Network. So our mission is to connect healthcare. Thank you. Our mission is to connect healthcare to plan for and respond to disasters. A lot of our most fragile citizens will need to be attended to after a disaster by healthcare, and our role is to bring together what can be competing entities at times together to plan in a collective way to build the capacity to take care of after a disaster.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, sir, pronunciation of your name, who you're represented, and what you think you're bringing to this advisory committee.
Yes, sir. My name is Joe Root, and I would represent the LEPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee.
You use were those letters?
LEPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee.
But do those letters stand for anything?
Yes, sir. Local Emergency Planning Committee.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Gotcha. And so then my background is as a hazmat tech with Puget Sound Fire for the last 8 years. Led me to the interest in the LEPC function, the planning committee function. Traditionally, LEPCs are an outgrowth of the SARA Title III and community right to know in regards to hazmat use and storage in the community. So my hazmat background was tied to that. I think the opportunity at the committee is to represent all of that, as well as the planning committee function that might be overlooked in the LEPC, and broaden that outreach back to to industry and include them in all planning functions.
Okay, and how many years do you bring to the table in the area you just described?
27 years total in the fire service, 8 years as a hazmat tech, and then 1 year in emergency management for the past year.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you. And now, Ms. Dombrowski, introduce yourself and pronounce your name correctly.
Okay. My name is Andrew Dombrowski, and I work for the Puget Sound Educational Service District. So there are 9 ESDs in the state. And
What's
so
the ESD?
It's an Educational Service District. And so the Puget Sound ESD represents all the districts in Pierce-King County, which includes 35 public schools plus the private schools.
Wow, okay.
And so my role at the ESD is around safety. And so we have school districts that belong to a safety co-op that we lead. And so being on the council allows me to bring concerns and topics that our school districts are having to the table, and really just on a county level to share information of what's happening and what concerns are coming from the districts.
And in preparation for that, do you attend the meeting where all the individual school districts come together and
So
talk
we actually
about issues?
host the meetings at our ESD, which is located in Renton.
Okay. And that's where you get a lot of information about concerns of individual schools as well as individual
Correct.
districts about emergency things that can arise.
Yes.
Very good.
And I've been at the ESD around safety for 11 years, and then before that I was at a school district in Tacoma.
Okay. What district were you?
Clover Park School District.
Clover Park. Okay. Well, welcome to all three of you. And now we'll go back to Susan. How long is your position being assigned for? I mean, how long are you being asked to serve? 1, 2, or 3 years?
I believe it's
Or Lisa, do you have the answer to
Councilmember,
that?
yes, her term will expire December 31st, 2019.
2019.
So a little over a
Okay.
year.
All right. All right. Have you had the occasion to attend any meetings thus far?
Yes, I have. I was actually the EMAC representative, for the American Red Cross for over a decade, and then transitioned roles to the Northwest Healthcare Response Network, and have been attending as an unelected alternate, so participating but not voting yet.
Great. Okay. Now I'd like to turn to my 3 colleagues who are members of this committee. Do you have any questions of her? Go ahead. Jeannie Cole-Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering for one or all of you, what do you see as the greatest challenge in your work on this
Right.
board?
I can speak from the healthcare lens a bit. I think it's a dual challenge, one of which is, again, the private entities coming together to collaborate and not compete. I'm very excited to say, though, my experience with that in the counties that we cover, which is currently King, Pierce, and Kitsap, is a general willingness to come to that table and have those conversations. We have the right healthcare thinkers that are very passionate about patient service. So that kind of strips away some of the barriers that could be there. I think the additional challenge and why I'm excited to participate in EMAC is the connection of healthcare to other response agencies. It's not always a natural connection. It's not the first thing that comes to forefront of mind. So, connecting so we have the same situational awareness and understanding of response plans is important to our organization so that we don't cause problems. We can actually tuck in with the community response. And that's what EMAC brings to the table, that participation for us, as well as allowing others to learn from a healthcare focus.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lambert. Oh, I'm sorry. You
I
weren't there.
didn't know if anybody else wanted to respond to my question, too.
Yes, I would say from the school standpoint, one of the concerns is probably just the urgency of when things happen. The urgency is to come up with a plan quickly, but sometimes things take time rather than just putting a bandage on something, making sure that something makes sense and it's gonna work. So just the time.
Now, okay. I'm sorry. She wants all 3.
Sure. And from my perspective, I would see 2 different challenges, one being resources. not only a shortage of all the resources that we would like to have, but then allocation of those resources once the event happens, and making sure those are allocated effectively. The second challenge I see is part of the planning piece and building a culture of preparedness that FEMA asks us to do. It's easy to plan for your weekend because that's coming. It's a little harder to plan for maybe the vacation at the end of the summer because that's a little farther off, but it's often challenging to plan for events that we hope don't happen. And I think that is a challenge. And I think all those functions that have addressed are all addressed at the EMAC level, at the EMAC committee.
Councilmember Lambert.
Thank you. I really appreciate your expertise and your willingness to serve. That's amazing. So I have a different question for each one of you, but I'll ask it as you're each coming up. So on the health care, we are very concerned out in the Valley that we don't have enough citizen-prepared health care people for the CERT teams. So they are concerned about how we get more people involved in the CERT. And one of the things that happened when we had a school bus turnover and we had to air vac the students out, we didn't know what hospital those kids went to. Mm-hmm. And so we had parents running all over the county trying to figure out where their kids were. So I think that that's an area that, maybe there could be an app or something where they could say, this kid, or we do know this kid's name or we don't, but, two blonde girls went this way and, one brunette boy went that way. So at least the parents would have an idea, where do I start looking for my kids? Because the parents that had to go to multiple hospitals were freaked out.
Yeah, I totally agree. That is a challenge with multi-casualty incidents. Our organization does work to try to make those connections. We have a footprint in patient tracking planning and patient tracking accountability. Where we were most recently active was in the Amtrak derailment, and we were responsible for patient tracking and reconciling the Amtrak manifest with the actual patient placement in healthcare. You've identified a really touchy area. I can't imagine what a family member would feel like. And we continue to work more. It's a whole community answer. We have a piece of that, but we continue to encourage more to do like patient tracking and do it in a coordinated method so that we can account for patients and feed our county colleagues who work often on that family reunification side. So I agree with you. It's an area that we continue to strive to make further efforts outside of some larger scale. How can we continue to drive that down to a more community level is an area of focus that we do work on collectively with our community partners.
So if I could just follow up on that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may.
Yeah.
So, again, as Joe said, we hope this never happens.
Right.
But if it does happen, how would the first responders in any of our districts be able to get that at the minute it happens? Because it happens so quickly. The helicopters are in, and then the ambulances are out, and people are up in the air, and you're like, okay, where do they go?
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you get that tool at the time you need it so quickly?
Right. And to be very honest, it may not ever be the instantaneous that we all hope for. Our organization works very closely with our EMS colleagues, and their goal and healthcare's goal is to take care of the most vulnerable people in the fastest, most expedient effort. Sometimes secondarily comes the identification of those individuals because they're life safety first. Where our organization comes in is as soon as possible, how do we register individuals by their placement, and then notify collectively their family members. Instantaneous is a little bit challenging because of all of the factors that we put in. And also, people want to get as close as they can to an accurate at least identifying markers of the individual. So the answer that is given is the correct answer. So some of that takes time. But we do work we're working in one of our counties that we have a footprint in to see if we can't pilot that tracking would start at the EMS level. I'm not certain how that will work, but we are trying to constantly bring it closer to that. I suspect there will always be a gap in time, which is not what families want to hear. But the reason for that is because they're taking care of their family members, and that's their first focus.
Thank you. I'd love to talk more about this online.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilmember Lambert.
For all of them?
No.
Are we going to go to the next one?
No, one at,
You want to go to the next one?
yeah.
Okay. So Joe, I would like to know, I went to Katrina on a team of people on first responders. What do you do? And we learned a lot about chemical mixing. So, you have this factory, and you have that factory, and you have this factory, and nobody has a list of who's got what chemicals, but now they're all flooded and they're all mixed. And what do you do? How can you help us to make sure that that doesn't happen to us?
So like you mentioned, that the challenge is after the fact when they mix. People are required to report what they have so we can clearly identify inventories, and we can assume from that point then, based on damage assessments and reported spills or leaks, what a facility may have as a spill or leak. The challenge then is when they mix, and you're right. By inventorying and comparing local inventories, kind of a best guess approach. It is a challenge.
And that was the thing that I left there concerned about was, if you know that factory A has these chemicals and factory B next door has these chemicals, if something should happen that they mix, does that make it combustible? Does that make it explosive? And is there any way that we can have a predictability app that would say, we really need to make sure that these two chemicals in an emergency do not get anywhere near each other?
Yeah, so again, through that planning process, we could identify the various chemicals at facilities and know potentials through a planning and permitting process. As facilities are built, that would be identified that to keep facilities and materials separate. And again, inside of facilities, to keep materials separate. But once they spread to that degree, there's not a super efficient way to identify what the combinations are and what the reactions are. On the positive side, when they disperse to that degree, they're often diluted. So it's usually not the same catastrophic effect as if the spills happen inside of a facility.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's a challenge. Okay. It's a challenge.
And did you have any questions that you wanted to ask Andrea?
Is your new boss going to be Joel Ayun?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know. Okay. So Joel is going to be the new ESD, but I don't know which ESD.
Oh, I don't think ours.
Not yours? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, because if he's going to be your new boss, you're going to be happy.
Okay.
And I'm sure you're happy now, but anyway, he just got the new job. So my interest for you in the schools is, are you mandating safety packs for all the students?
No. So we, as an ESD, can't mandate anything for our school districts. We can advise. And there are some school districts who have board members who that's what they are recommending or asking their district to provide. But from us, we get recommendations from OSPI. And so they give us what should be included in those packets, which we then pass along.
So as a former teacher, going through 3 different catastrophes, the safety packs were amazing.
Mm-hmm. And so some of the things that we do around the safety packs is we will bring in different folks and vendors who can provide those at a very good cost. Mm-hmm. And then there's also some grants out there that we can also get that we kind of help manage and assist the districts with.
Great. I have a school district that needs that. I'll call you on that. Thank you. All right, I'm ready.
All right.
Got 2 minutes to make now.
You're the vice chair, so I'm ready. And I'd like for us to do each, although all 3 of them there, let's do each of them individually.
Yes,
Start
some
with
of them have
Susan.
amendments.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move motion number 2018-0234 with a due pass recommendation for Susan Pelez. Mr. Chair, there is an amendment.
All right.
Page 13.
Yes, thank you. I've got it.
Thank you, Lisa.
And I'd like to move amendment number 1, and that's the one that Lisa told us replaces the financial disclosure report with the 2018 version.
Thank you. Amendment 1 has just been explained. Does any member have any questions on it? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting Amendment 1 to this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a no? Okay, the amendment number 1 has passed. So now to the proposed motion as amended. Are there any final comments? Hearing none, I'd like to turn to the clerk and have her call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Dunn? Councilmember Cole-Wells?
Aye.
Councilmember McDermott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 4 ayes, no nos.
Thank you. Having received the required majority support for this motion, Susan, we will move your name to the King County Council as a whole, and we're going to put this on our consent calendar, so there won't be any need for you to be present. And on behalf of our committee, though, I'd like to use this occasion to congratulate you and wish you well in serving your county residents.
Thank you, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah. Now we move to the second motion, and I turn back to Councilman Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move proposed motion 2018-0237. There's also an amendment on page 21, and that amendment replaces an incorrect reference to the district in which he resides.
Lisa, is that right? It's where he resides, not where his business is.
It had an incorrect reference to where he resides, and it is replaced with a correct identification of where he works. It's a little complex. Both statements are correct.
Both statements are
What
correct.
Councilmember Lambert said and what I did.
All right. Thank you. Amendment 1 has just been explained to us. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to adopting it? No. Ayes have it. The amendment is properly adopted. Now to title amendment T1.
I'd like to move title amendment number 1 on page 23 to correspond with our amendment.
All right. Title amendment T1 has been moved. Are there any questions on it? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the title amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to adopting it? No. Ayes have it. The title amendment is properly adopted. Now to the underlining motion as amended. I'd like to turn to the clerk and have her call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Dunn? Councilmember Cole-Wells?
Aye.
Councilmember McDermott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 4 ayes, no nos.
Thank you. Having received the proper number of votes, this motion is adopted. We're going to move it on to the County Council as a whole, where Mr. Root, it'll be on the consent calendar, like I said, and there'd be no need for you to be there. And we're happy that you're going to be serving on our Emergency Management Committee.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
All right. Now to our third, but certainly not last or least in terms of our thoughts, is Andrea.
Thank you. I'd like to move proposed ordinance 2018-0238 with a due pass recommendation. There's no amendments.
No amendment. Okay. And are there any questions regarding her recommendation? Councilmember Lambert.
I'd just like to say that all three of you are amazing, and your skill bases are so varied, and I think we're really blessed to have all three of you, so thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on this motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Dunn? Councilmember Cole-Wells?
Aye.
Councilmember McDermott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 4 ayes, no nos.
Thank you. Having received the proper votes, proposed motion 2018-0238, confirming the appointment of Andrea Dombrowski to the Emergency Management Advisory Committee is adopted. And as I've indicated to your two partners, there won't be a need for you to come to the County Council. We're going to put all three motions on our consent calendar. And like I indicated to the other two, we're very happy that you will be serving and representing us on the Emergency Management Committee.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes our, thank you, all three of you, for being here. And while they're proceeding away from the table, I'd like to announce what our next item is. It is agenda item number 8 for those of you who have agendas. And this is a briefing, a very important briefing that we're about to have. And it's titled Transparency and Media Relations in High Profile cases. Specifically, we're talking about cases involving our sheriff's department and the broader community. But before we get started on this important issue, I would like to clarify the subject of this agenda item, and this is very important that we do this. Today, the King County Office of Law Enforcement Oversight will be presenting a report undertaken and prepared by the Brechner Center for Freedom of Information based at the University of Florida. And this report relates to ways the King County Sheriff's Office interacts with the media, and it includes some very specific suggestions on how the sheriff's media policy and public outreach practices could be improved. This report is based entirely on public records that were reviewed by these researchers, mostly involving various news accounts compiled by the Brechner Center. It does not include any information provided by King County government officials, that's us and our executive and others. We are receiving this report today to talk about the important findings of the report, which again deals with ways to improve the sheriff's media and public outreach policies. We are not talking today about any particular person or case that has or is currently being investigated. There is important work going on separately in connection with some cases right now, but we won't be discussing the specifics of any of those cases. And we need to let that work continue in its proper context and in its regular fashion. I and the rest of our committee members have tremendous respect for the affected families currently and in the past that have been involved in these processes, as well as deep respect for our King County Sheriff's Department and our government in general. And we don't want to get prematurely involved in any things that are being discussed that should not be discussed. I, as the chair, would like to thank members of this committee for confining your questions and your comments to the topic and not straying into the particulars of some individual person or case you have recently or currently heard about or in the past. And I will, as the chair, try to monitor that as best I can. And finally, I appreciate the public's understanding as we take up this matter, this very important matter and topic issue on this afternoon. So with that background, I would like to invite up Ms. Deborah Jacobs, who is the director of our Office of Law Enforcement Oversight, and have her come to the table and briefly provide information about the focus that I just said this item will be on. How are you doing this afternoon, Deborah?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to all the council members, and I'm pleased to meet with you today. I appreciate the opportunity. I'll be presenting today policy recommendations on the King County Sheriff's Office's practices relating to releasing information to the public following critical incidents like police-involved shootings. The Office of Law Enforcement Oversight asked the University of Florida's Brechner Center for Freedom of Information to develop this report nearly a year ago in July 2017. The Brechner Center is a national source of expertise about the law of gathering and disseminating news. This report was completed on a pro bono basis by the Brechner Center Director Frank Lomonte and legal fellow Linda Norbut. I'd like to express my gratitude for the generosity of the Brechner Center in sharing its expertise and resources to develop this report. Olio's interest in how the Sheriff's Office provides information to the press comes from two pertinent observations. The first is that the initial information released by law enforcement shapes the narrative and becomes the public's understanding of an incident. The release and perpetuation of inaccurate or misleading information about an incident has serious potential consequences to all involved. Second, Olio staff often hear from families of decedents about the traumatizing impact of how their loved ones are portrayed in the media. False or misrepresentations about an incident in the press literally add insult to injury. Sometimes the concerns of impacted family members stem from language and narrative choices made exclusively by the press. But other times their concerns stem from what law enforcement agencies release to the public and the press. Information or misinformation that originates from a police agency can land in literally hundreds of thousands of news stories. This heightens the urgency of ensuring that police agencies take the utmost care in communicating with the press and public about critical incidents. Communicating with care means communicating with accuracy and respect and requires thoughtful guiding policies. Applying its expertise in freedom of information laws and research, the Brechner Center reviewed the Sheriff's Office's media policies, again using only publicly available sources to inform the report. The scope of their research included a nationwide review of different departments' best practices to identify potential areas for strengthening the Sheriff's Office's public information policies. The report before you is the result of that exploration, and I will now highlight some of the key recommendations for you. First and foremost, priority should be given to notifying family members and making efforts to notifying them prior to the release of names and information to the media. The Sheriff's Office should also make affirmative efforts to reach out to ethnic media serving diverse audiences, including non-English speakers. The Sheriff's Offices should proactively push out all releasable information about high-profile cases to the local media. This requires the sheriff to add to their policy on high-profile matters, officer-involved shootings, or other uses of force resulting in serious injury or death. The inclusion of officer-involved shootings as a high-profile matter will signal the importance of providing regular updates to news media and social media. Other recommended elements of proactive communication appropriate in such cases are top leadership should address the public within hours to provide the best available information. News media should receive regular briefings from the Sheriff's Office to receive any releasable information or updates. Media relations officers should have a clear understanding of which types of information are releasable and which should be withheld to protect an investigation. In addition, if previously furnished information was inaccurate or misleading, the media relations officer should publicly update the information as rapidly as possible, transparently acknowledge the misinformation, and explain to the public how the misinformation occurred. The report also offers new criteria for the release of a decedent's criminal history. This information should be available upon request under the Public Records Act, but not affirmatively released unless deemed necessary for public safety or if it's relevant and known to involved officers prior to the use of force. Finally, the report offers guidelines on the release of video footage. Although the Sheriff's Office does not currently have dash or body cameras, these recommendations can guide policy if the department utilizes cameras in the future. We provided a draft of this report with our recommendations to the Sheriff's Office in February of this year. Moving forward, we will seek to work with the Sheriff's Office to advance these recommendations into policy and practice. I want to thank you for your interest in this issue. Our recommendations are small, but they're critically important changes. Implementing these recommended policies can have a profound impact and positive impact on trust and relationships between the Sheriff's Office and the public of King County. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll begin. You said that the recommendations are small, but potentially very important. Are you talking about the recommendation overall report or the recommendations that you garnered from reading it?
I've tried to highlight some of the most critical recommendations. I think the whole report, especially for the sheriff's office, is worth reviewing and digesting. But things like correcting inaccurate information, instead of letting those types of decisions be left to discretion, policy guidance in that setting would have very important outcomes.
Yeah, but sometimes enterprising public press are good at getting to the real, facts about issues. So that can be a role that they continue to play.
Absolutely, but if we're trying to build trust between community and public, it's better if any misinformation that comes from a police agency like the sheriff's office be corrected by that same agency, because how will the public trust the agency if they become aware that false information has come out? It's terribly damaging to community and police relations in that manner. So even though the press are enterprising and can and have figured those kind of things out, the duty is to the sheriff's office to correct it.
Do you know whether or not you have indicated your perception of the outcome of this report, or whether or not the sheriff's department has, because they had indicated they weren't able to be with us this afternoon, they have read it and indicated their perspective on it?
I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking for them. I do know that at least some of the members of the department have read it. Beyond that, I can't speak to it.
All right. Members, do you have any?
He has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Jacobs, you referenced that you've shared a draft of the report with the sheriff in February. Have you received, is there public response from the sheriff? And if not public response, is there private response to you or your office that you can acknowledge or discuss?
I personally have received no formal response relating to the content of the report. And I've heard while sitting here today that maybe something was put out today, but I am unaware of it.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Lambert.
Thank you. Help me with this information. I think an officer has 24 hours to write the report. Is that correct?
So I think what you're asking is, after a shooting or a critical incident, how long does the officer have to give their account? They have 48 hours to provide a written account.
So when I worked for the bank and we had robberies, we had to be trained on what do you do. We had to give our report very quickly. We're not allowed to talk to anybody until we did our report, so that we didn't forget any details and that we didn't process things weird. So it surprises me that on the one hand, the FBI says don't talk to anybody, write your report immediately, and this is 48 hours later. So I don't understand where the difference is.
What's mostly addressed here is what the sheriff's department would relay to the public and the press, and it would be highly unlikely, I think, that they would relay details of what was in an officer's statement of that nature. For one thing, they have to protect the pending investigation and make careful, thoughtful decisions about what can and should be released. I think the sentiment should be one of the default being a desire to release, but it's most important to protect that investigation. And I do want to point out that we know in our region there's been tremendous talk and interest in the issue of whether and how officers are considered for criminal charges in those kind of situations. And if that's something that the public desires, the public also has to understand that that type of investigation requires a confidential investigation process to protect its integrity. Councilmember Lambert, I will mention to you that there are a lot of departments that have differing policies with respect to how soon officer involved in an incident would give a statement or preferably be interviewed. And that's an area where we would love to look for change and improvement in King County for the future. I'm just kind of flagging that for you since you brought it up and mentioned your own experience with giving statements.
So if I could follow up on that, I don't see where the 4 recommendations are in here.
So most of the recommendations that I shared you'll find highlighted towards the end of the report within the policy recommendations. They're also discussed previously. The majority are on page 29 and maybe 31. And you can see the language recommendations there. But that does, again, that's not related to, this is purely about the public information practices, not the underlying use of force review practices, which is where that question of the involved officer statements comes up.
Thank you. I would like to know why we have the 48-hour policy and why is it different from others?
Yeah, for example, I believe the policy for Seattle Police is that an interview, not a written statement, an interview is provided before the end of the shift. I think that's the policy they have. An interview is a superior way of gathering information to a written statement.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cole Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is partially answered by what you just replied to Councilmember Lambert on. What are some of the departments that do have different practices that you think would be worthwhile for us to look into? Just some examples.
Well, we did refer, among others, to the Seattle department. They've had the benefit of the spotlight of the federal government to help develop robust policies. And also, P.S., this is not a science. Each situation is different. This, where I said, they should make efforts to contact family before releasing names to the press. There's all kinds of levels of complexity that can come with that. So I think, we have to be mindful of that. But I think looking at some of the larger departments in the report, I believe they looked at Chicago, and I'm kind of need to refresh myself on it. But I think looking at larger city departments, but those are named in this report, and I can lift them up, but I'd have to go through a little bit. In terms of the policies relating to the issue Councilmember Lambert raised, there's also a lot of good stuff, and we're actively making policy proposals around that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any counties or equivalent to what we have here that you think have some approaches that might be worthwhile?
In general, I think LA County is a good place for us, even though it's a vastly larger county. I think police personnel are like 18,000, but because of that size, they have, more incidents, more experience, more practice. So that's one place I would look. Whenever I compare things, I try to stick with the West Coast or the western part of the country. Denver's another good option. Policing on East and West Coast are very different. One of the differences is that it's vastly more militarized on the West Coast than the East Coast, and you see a variety of practices that feed into that dynamic.
Interesting.
You're welcome. All right. I believe that's all the individual. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Jacobs, we've spoken about the report, but really it's about the recommendations in the report that you've brought to us today. And one of the recommendations is about correcting erroneous information. In some cases, that's with no intent whatsoever. It's actually genuine human error, is it not? And is there still a value to correction in such an incident?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if inaccurate information about such a important incident, and it could be inaccurate information that could affect the law enforcement personnel involved or the members of the public involved, whether it's intentional or unintentional, as a matter of transparency, it's essential to correct it and be able to kind of try to wrangle it in. And again, with the unintentionality, it speaks to some of the complexities that the sheriff's office has to face in determining what information to release, and that's why one of the recommendations was to have clarity before it happens on what types of information and materials can we release and what is most important to hold back while we conduct our investigation.
Thank you.
All right. Deborah, was there other people that you... Is that it?
That's it from my end.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. In relation to the report, we did ask one of the families that is currently involved in a case, which I understand, but I'm a little hesitant. The sheriff's office came up with their initial report on yesterday about to be here, and we provided their family an opportunity to make a statement. So I don't know the names of the individuals that would be coming up. Well, we only got 4. Yeah, I was told that 3 would come up, and if we had time for others, that we would just ask them to replace. Yeah, so 3 of you plus you, yeah. Well,
good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We got to get the mics on for everybody. The way that those that, okay, I believe all the mics on. The way that we usually take input is we ask that people give their names, and if you're a family member or represent an organization, that too, before you say anything. So we'll start with you, sir. Who are you and who do you represent?
I'm Jeff Campeach, and this is Linda Tran.
Linda Tran?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Tôi là Diệu, mẹ của Tommy.
She's you. She's Tommy Lee's mother.
I'll go ahead.
Wait a minute. Okay. But you guys
This
got
is
to
Yu-Ho.
talk one at a time and use that
Yu-Ho,
mic when
say
you
it
do.
now.
Yeah. I'm Diệu, Tommy, mom.
Okay, thank you.
And this is Su Yen Lei.
Suyen Lee.
She's Tommy's aunt, but was raised with Tommy. And this is
Yuan Lee. Also Tommy's aunt.
Okay, and you, sir, are?
I'm Jeff Campeach.
Did you already mention that? And you're the lawyer for?
Linda and I are the lawyers for the Lei family.
Okay, now I'm straight. And I was told you had a statement that you wanted.
A brief
Yeah.
statement.
All right, let's hear it.
1 year's passed since the King County deputy shot Tommy Lee, who was unarmed, Vietnamese American high school student. He was shot in the back. Tommy's needless death has enraged the Asian and Vietnamese community and many other people in the community. And it's important to know that he had no criminal history and had never been in any trouble. We believe to avoid public outrage over the shooting of an unarmed student of color, the sheriff's office intentionally misstated the truth about the killing. Maybe not the top officials intentionally, but it came up to them. And what they said was that Tommy was shot because he was attacking the sheriff's deputies with a knife. He was unarmed when he was shot, and he was shot in the back. Eventually, the newspaper, the Seattle Weekly, disclosed the fact that he was unarmed. Harm was done to the family in addition to losing their child, which was a big loss to them. It's a very close family. They're all refugees, except Tommy, who was born here from Vietnam. They're very law-abiding people. They have never got a traffic ticket. And so, in addition to losing their child, they were humiliated that Tommy would attack the police with a knife. And the deputies even came to their home and told them the same thing. The family didn't believe it, but they didn't know what to do. And so part of the harm, in addition to what we think was the unnecessary killing of an unarmed young man, was the shame and the humiliation the family felt. We see that the sole entity in King County that seems to care about that publicly has been Oleo and this report. And it addresses some very important changes that the sheriff's office should make. It makes sense to me in retrospect that the sheriff's office would choose not to come to this hearing. And that they would redact the first 4 pages, insist on the redaction of the first 4 pages of the report, which outlined their misstatement of the truth. Fortunately, the author of the report was forthcoming, and the report has been circulated with all of the facts in it. Facts that did not come from officials, but facts that came from the press and public statements. So a year has gone by. This is the anniversary. And to the Vietnamese community, the 1-year anniversary of a death, it has very significant religious consequences and importance. And the family asks, it is appreciated the number of statements by both the prosecutor, Mr. Satterberg, and the sheriff, Johan Knecht, that they grieve for the loss of Tommy Lee, and they're sorry about the loss. But the family, you know, they're refugees from oppression, and they're not, although they're very law-abiding, they're not exactly cowed. They have opinions, strong opinions, like your Asian community in this county. They're very polite about their opinions. They don't riot. They seldom carry signs, but they have them. I can assure you that our office is besieged with information, with contacts from the Asian community, particularly the Vietnamese. They've kept this story on the front page of the Vietnamese newspaper since the shooting. Every edition, something's in there. They care about this. And they want to know why no action has been taken. There's been no consequence. The deputy that shot Tommy Lee is still carrying a gun in their community. The people who made the misstatements, and you can't believe that they didn't know there was no knife. The first thing that was established at the scene was there was no knife within moments of the shooting, if not before. But yet the misstatement was made. And so the Asian community and some of the other non-Asians in the community are asking for honesty from the government. The Lees wonder why you need a study to tell the sheriff's office to tell the truth. Why you need a professor to tell us this. We're reminded that Thomas Jefferson told us that the freedom of press is the foundation of our democracy. And in the same vein, misleading the press is to mislead the public. The Lee family understand this, and they're asking that there be some consequence for those actions. In addition, that this council urged the sheriff's office to make the proposed changes that Ms. Jacobson has so thoughtfully presented to you with such a well-documented report, a report that looks around our country, around our democracy, that points out that King County is not in line with the progressive areas of our country, or even with the not-so-progressive areas, that you're well behind. And she's done a good job. And from the Lee family standpoint, she's the sole advocate in the King County government for the truth. Ask yourself this when you look at this. Is it possible, after the young man is lying on the ground bleeding to death, that the sheriff's office didn't know he was unarmed? You can read the reports. They are looking high and low for a weapon. They get search warrants. They search the neighborhood. How could this, what's their excuse? Their public information officer went on a vacation. This is very pale to the Lee family. This is very pale to the Asian community. And they're asking for consequence, and they're asking for change. And this report makes sense. And they are urging the council to adopt it and encourage it. And maybe ask the sheriff's office more strongly worded to show up and discuss this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I went on too long.
Yeah, thank you. We will allow the others at the table to make brief comments, but I need to reinforce, at least contextually, some of the things that I indicated a little earlier in my statement. This issue of a county department giving the community and the press accurate account is a relevant topic matter for us to deal with. And our ability to figure out ways based on independent reports and consultative reports like this are very important in helping us to come up with checks and balances in the future that mitigate against false statements getting out and not being able to be corrected by our government, or always, if it's corrected by the media or somebody else. We also do need to spend time talking about how it is that we allow the press to get information from King County government officials that is accurate, and we need to listen to the press in terms of telling us what they found when they went out and talked to people in the communities and have those inconsistencies. So that is why we're having this initial meeting today, is to get from people other suggestions that you might have that you think we should consider, and trying to figure out how we suggest to the Sheriff's Department, the King County Executive, and to ourselves as policymakers, things that we ought to be doing to make sure when conflict or major conflict occur between the community, a family in the community, and our King County Sheriff's Department or other parts of our government, that we better facilitate the truth and the real and the most important and accurate information getting out. And it is legitimate for us this afternoon to talk about those things. The specifics of your case and whether or not what you said or they may say about what really happened, that is not our job at this time. But we are committed to figure out and looking at your case, your son or brother's case, and others that will arise in the future, that we do a much better job based on the report, based on your input and other information that we gather. So we won't be able to talk about the specifics of the case, but anything you have to say that relates to how we can get the truth out better in relationship to the press and the community is helpful to us. We just can't talk or respond to stuff about the individual case of Tommy Lay.
The first thing that has to happen is the law enforcement has to want to tell the truth.
Okay.
They have to hear from you that we want you to tell the truth, even if we made a mistake. The public is entitled to the truth. That's part of your job.
Yeah, and they will hear that if that's
that's what the Lee family wants you to hear.
All right, thank you. But I want to give a chance for any of them to say something if they so desire.
You want to speak first, Mom?
Yeah.
Okay, for the record, for our clerk, got to write down. Do you have her name already? Okay. Proceed, ma'am.
Hôm nay tôi cảm ơn mọi người.
Why don't you let her use your mic, and then both of them have a mic. That's all I want to say.
Ngày hôm nay tôi đến đây để cảm ơn mọi người.
Today she comes here to thank you everyone.
Để giúp đỡ cho con của chúng tôi là Tommy.
To help our son Tommy. To help bring voice to
Đã một
Tommy.
năm rồi mà trên chính phủ không có làm gì hết.
It has been 1 year and the government has not done anything to.
Hôm nay là một năm là đúng Việt Nam là một năm là ngày đau khổ nhất của gia đình chúng tôi.
In our Vietnamese culture, this 1 year death anniversary is the most saddening
Cho nên tôi cũng nhờ tất cả mọi người để giúp đỡ cho cái chuyện của con chúng tôi.
So we ask that you all help find justice for our Tommy and to help our family.
Tôi chỉ nói bao nhiêu đó thôi. Tôi cảm ơn tất cả.
And that is all I want to say, and I thank you all for being here.
And we thank her for being here. And on behalf of our committee, I can just make a commitment that we'll do all that we can to get justice for Tommy and the whole county as we proceed forward. Wait, yeah, you need to say it over the microphone.
Okay. Own it.
But in the Vietnamese.
As chair of King County Council, ông hứa là ông sẽ find justice cho Tommy.
We're committed.
Ông hứa lại.
Tôi cũng cảm ơn.
She said thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did either of you ladies want to say anything?
Yeah.
In regards to what I said this meeting is about?
First of all, on behalf of our family, I would like to thank you for having us here today.
Okay.
And thank you for your support. While the Lay family appreciate the condolences, which we believe are heartfelt, this year has been a terrible year. And now, the anniversary of Tommy's death, we are frustrated with King County. Deborah Jacob has been the only King County person to try to do something meaningful regarding, the lies of the press. And the Lay family has been told the night that Tommy was killed. And we thank her.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to
state your name again.
My name is Yuan Lei, and just to kind of go along with what Suan was saying, it's been a year of unending grief, shame, and humiliation for us, and the only thing we got from the county was the word sorry. So on this anniversary of Tommy's death, we're begging for more. Real action, real change, accountability. Only then will our family receive the justice that we and Tommy deserve. We're a strong Vietnamese family, a good family, and we're supported by the greater community. We will not give up until the county decides to take responsibility for what happened to Tommy.
All right, thank you. Did any of my colleagues on the committee want to make any statement or quick questions before we proceed? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the subject of today's report and the discussion we're having is very important. Tommy's aunt just spoke about a year of grief, shame, and humiliation. And it strikes me that Tommy's death alone would cause the grief. But it was actually the shame and the humiliation were caused and compounded by inaccurate information that wasn't corrected. It first was disclosed in the first place and then was not corrected. And I don't have words for how unfortunate that is. Grief is more than enough, and we shouldn't compound it.
But I think, Joe, that we can be a lot more proactive at getting and digging a little deeper for the truth as it relates to the responsibilities that King County government officials, particularly in the sheriff's office, have, and move the ball down the road toward, getting justice to the extent that one can get justice after someone has unfortunately passed away in the manner that Tommy did. And all we can do is pledge to the family and the community that given our authority and our commitment that will be done by working with you all, the sheriff and everybody else in our government, so that you don't have to come back here a year from now saying the same thing. That's our pledge. Do any other members want to? Huh?
We have to do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other members have? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we will keep in touch with you all about what's going to happen in relationship to the report, our acceptance of it, and the particulars of your case moving forward, and work hard at making a commitment that it doesn't take another whole year to get a resolution that is fair to all parties, even though some parties might not like what we conclude is fair. All right? Thank you.
That's all the
Thank
Lee
you.
families ask for.
All right.
We know you can't return the child, but justice for Tommy and truth in the way the police handle other incidents of this nature is important to the Lee family, not just their own loss, but other young people whose lives have been taken.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We are now on, Madam Clerk, we are now on item number 9, and that is an ordinance related to district court and allowing the use of county funds to provide incentives to participants in the therapeutic courts. Hi, how you doing? Are you the staff person?
Yes, I am.
Sam, for
Sam
this?
Porter.
Okay. Sam Porter, another one of our able staff, has been the one that has worked on this ordinance, so we're going to turn to her and have her give a report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sam Porter, Council Central Staff. The documents for this item begin on page 35 of your packet.
All right.
Proposed ordinance 2018-0181 would allow district court to use county funds to provide incentive rewards with a financial value to participants in their therapeutic courts. District court has 3 types of therapeutic courts: the Regional Mental Health Court, Regional Veterans Court, and the recently opened Community Court. Under the proposed ordinance, participants in these courts would be eligible to receive incentive rewards to recognize individual achievements and encourage further participation and successful outcomes. Incentive rewards most commonly used in treatment courts include candy, notebooks, or journals, movie tickets, or gift cards. According to the legislation, no single reward could be valued at more than $25 unless pre-approved by the Chief Administrative Officer of the court. District Court has expressed that they intend to purchase incentive rewards through their existing appropriation. Therefore, there is no fiscal impact at this time. Court staff estimate a total annual expenditure of approximately $3,200 between the 3 existing treatment courts. And that concludes my remarks. Staff from District Court are available as well.
All right. Now I would like to have the staff. We invited Judge Donna Tucker, the presiding judge, Othniel Palomino, the Chief Administrative Officer, and Calista Wellbaum to be here this afternoon. Are any of them here?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Can you proceed to the table? Meanwhile, I'd like to turn to Councilman Lambert and give her an opportunity to ask her question.
Thank you. I think we did this like maybe 6 years ago to the Superior Court.
Superior Court.
And I went and watched Judge Clark doing this. So obviously it was before she died. But she used this, and I watched a lady receiving some bubble bath, and you would have thought she'd just been given a new Ferrari. It was so exciting. It actually brought tears to my eyes. She was so excited. So I think we've had really good results in the Superior Court. So I'm just really excited that the District Court is going to be having the same tool. And if it's exciting in the District Court as it was watching it in the Superior Court, way to go. Thank you.
Sam, are you aware whether or not the District Court's already doing this?
Yes, District Court did.
I mean, the Superior Court is already doing it.
Yes, Superior Court. Superior Court passed this, I believe, in 2013.
All right.
I would need to double check on the exact date, but they did.
All right.
Really good. That's good.
Now, we would like to hear from you, too, before we take this matter up and vote on it. Why is the district court desirous to do this now, and what do you think are the positive products that will result from being able to offer these kinds of services to your clientele?
And I'll defer to Callista Walbaum in a second, but the district court...
You got to tell the people your name.
My name is Othniel Palomino. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the King County District Court.
How did Councilmember Gossett do in enunciating your name?
You did it perfectly, Councilmember.
Thank you. That's what he wanted to hear. Go ahead.
We're very excited about this program because sometimes in life, the small things really do matter. And we're going to be initially focusing on people who need just a little bit of incentive or a little bit of a reward to recognize where they've come from. And where we're hoping to get them through. And with the our mental health court, our veterans court, and now with our community court in Redmond, we are very, very excited about the opportunity that we will have to provide these types of incentives to the participants in that court. So I'd like to turn it over to Callista Walbaum, who's the manager of these three courts, to make a couple of remarks.
All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Callista Walbaum. Thank you for having us. I am very excited about this opportunity because it's in line with best practices for therapeutic courts. As the manager of these courts, I want to do what I can do to be the best steward of the resources that we have and help our participants be as successful as possible. So when there's repeated articles and data that shows that there is something that will help people stay in recovery and reduce their criminal involvement, I want our courts to be a part of that. So that's why I'm bringing this ordinance to you today.
It is unusual for the King County Council to have these kind of requests, and they don't, even at the earlier initial phase, include a request of us to find some money on you all's behalf. So how is it that you're able to, at least in the short run, be able to start doing this if we sign off on it?
The amount of money that we're requesting is de minimis. I think it's about $3,000 or so. And so we're able...
Where will it come from?
We're able to find it from other parts of our operations. $3,000 is a small enough amount that just in terms of different type of operational efficiencies that we have realized over the biennium that we can provide for.
I know, but how long will that last? Either one of you.
It's going to last for the
rest of 2018 or 2018 and 2019.
I think it's going to go through 2019.
We have funds requested for the 2019-2020 budget for community court, but with the existing regional mental health court and regional veterans court budget, we would be not asking for any funds.
All right. Thank you. Do any committee members have any additional comments or questions before we proceed on this request? Councilmember Lambert.
Thank you. My only would be way to go. So thank you. Two more of us have signed on to the bill, so thank you. I'd like to move to the proposed ordinance 2018-0181 with a due pass recommendation, and there is a amendment and a title amendment.
Okay. It's been moved that we adopt ordinance number 2018-0181, and this is related to district court been allowed to use county funds to provide incentives, non-monetary incentives to participants in therapeutic court. Now, proceed, Kathy.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to move amendment number 1.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The amendment would place the proposed ordinance in Chapter 2.68 of the King County Code instead of in a new chapter entitled 2A as was proposed in the legislation as it was transmitted. So it's just where it be put in the code.
Well, I'd like to ask you and Sam, why is it necessary to change it?
It was a recommendation from the code revisor. The section 2.68 pertains to district court.
Oh, so we're putting it somewhere that's clear in terms of its meaning.
Yes.
Okay. Proceed, Kathy.
That's it.
And what was it, Amendment 1?
Amendment 1. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Amendment 1 has been presented to us. Do any committee members have any questions or final comments on this matter? Hearing none, I'd like to turn to our clerk and have her call.
That's just a vote.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 1, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to it? No. The ayes have it. Amendment 1 to this ordinance is adopted. Are there any other amendments? Or
Just a title amendment.
Let's hear the title amendment.
Title amendment number 1, which was on our table, just aligns this with the amendment with the ordinance.
What?
It amends the title with the ordinance changing where it was put in the code.
Oh, okay. Our title amendment 1 has been moved and explained. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the title amendment number 1, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Ayes have it. T1 is adopted. Anything else? Okay, now to the underlining ordinance as properly amended. Before I turn to the clerk, do any members have any final comments?
It's exciting.
Okay. What did you say?
I said it's just exciting.
Okay, she said it's just it's exciting that we're moving in this direction. Okay, that's a good note to turn to our clerk and have her call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Dunn? Councilmember Cole-Wells?
Aye.
Councilmember McDermott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 4 ayes, no nos.
Thank you. Having received the required majority, ordinance number 2018-0181 related to district court has been adopted, and it will proceed to the county council as a whole. And I'm going to keep it off the consent calendar because a couple of us would like to make some comments about it. Okay? And that the regular process, I think, will be all right, Wendy, unless is this an urgency?
I suspect that district court might like the ability to have this tool sooner rather than later.
Sooner, okay.
Yeah, we can expedite, but not consent.
Yeah. Okay, so expedite and not consent. It won't be on the consent calendar, but we'll put it on the calendar for next Monday. If you could tell Judge Tucker.
I will let her know.
And we thank both of you for your patience in waiting through a relatively long meeting. But this, as Councilmember Lambert has said, is an important issue, and we're happy that we were able to be supportive of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Wendy, where do we move to now? Agenda item 10.
Yes, you have a briefing from the director from the Department of Public Defense.
Great. We get to hear from the Department of Public Defense, and we have invited Lorinda Youngcourt, the director of said department, to be here on this afternoon. And Jenny, our staff person, is also helping us out on this matter. So, Lorinda, I'm going to turn to Jenny first and have her give Council Maddox staff report on this matter, and then turn to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilmember Gossett, members of the committee, Jenny Giambattista, Council staff. We are, as you indicated, on agenda item 10 of the packet, which is page 45. We have invited today Director Youngcourt to brief on the annual report that is required as part of the ordinance that created the King County Department of Defense. That ordinance calls for the public defender to each year to report to the council on how the department is doing in consideration of the American Bar Association's 10 principles of a public defense delivery system. This report is due to the council every year on April 1st. These principles were created as a practical guide for public officials and policymakers as a guide of what is the fundamental criteria necessary to ensure a public defense system that provides efficient, effective, and high-quality, ethical, conflict-free legal representation for defendants unable to afford an attorney. As I indicated, the report was transmitted, and without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Director Youngcourt.
Okay, we'll do that, but I have a question of you beforehand. I mean, I remember getting a similar report in relationship to our audit office, but it was a report that had been developed by, what they call it, peer groups. Peer auditors from around the country came in and looked at them and developed a report and presented it to us. So I want to ask you, who did this report? I mean,
The report
is it
that
internal
was
report?
Yes, the report that is transmitted is
this is
required
different.
by the ordinance. It's a requirement of the director to prepare this report every year.
Okay,
Council member, you may be thinking of there is another report that is required by the Public Defense Advisory Board, otherwise known as PDAB. That report is also done annually. I don't think there is a specific due date, but I was just at their advisory board meeting last week, and they are actively working on preparing that report.
Okay. I just got thrown off by the American Bar Association developed the
Those are the principles
Okay.
that are used.
upon which that the reports are, they ask that all public defenders use in looking at how well they're doing. All right. That clarification is helpful to me. Lorinda Youngcourt, it's always our pleasure to have you present before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members, and committee members. I sit here today. It's my third. I've been here 3.5 years, and I am still so very proud to be King County's first public defender and the first director of the King County Department of Public Defense. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about kind of the 4 years, in addition to some interesting things and good things that we've done in the last year. Recently, some improvements that we have made that benefit the clients, our people here in King County. We implemented a telephone screening program. It used to be that our clients would have to make a trip specifically to the courthouse to do a financial screening. We changed that in the last 1.5 years, and now all they have to do is pick up the phone. If they are in court, there's a phone there available for them that is kind of a hotline, if you will, directly to our office so that they can do their screening via telephone. The best part about this is that means they're never going to need to come to court, so long as they call, without an attorney at hand.
That's what that means?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are in the process, as part of our department's equity and social justice planning, implementing a sliding fee scale for those clients who are indigent yet able to contribute. It's been the longstanding practice in King County that regardless of how much money an individual made, they would pay a flat fee for whether it was a felony case or a misdemeanor case. An internal committee within DPD, Equity and Social Justice team, came up with this sliding fee scale. It's now with performance strategy and budget for final approval.
So you're not going to be able to tell us today what the
I can't tell you
amounts
today.
are. All right.
It should be, I would hopefully be transmitted with budget proposals.
Okay, thank you.
And since 2015, we have implemented a policy, and we believe that it is being followed, that allows every single client who is incarcerated in one of our detention facilities here in King County to see their attorney within 24 hours.
And you're going to try to achieve that?
We have been doing it, council member.
Okay.
And this is to explain to you the significance of this. Around the country, individuals are arrested. They come into contact with police officers, and a police officer reads them their Miranda rights and tells them you have the right to counsel. But generally, in most places outside of King County, that means at some other time. It means a few days after you've been in jail. It means after you've been to court and the court has sent some paperwork over to a public defender's office, and then that public defender's office has been able to get over to the jail to see you. Here in King County, it means exactly what it says. You have the right to counsel. We also provide counsel ahead of the rest of the nation, but in compliance with the Constitution, that allows our clients to pick up the phone and call our on-call attorney service. And if they have a police officer at their door, or a police officer has pulled them over alongside the road and they have questions, they can phone us. Through collaboration with our local police agencies, police officers carry that 24-hour telephone number, and if you're pulled over, they will facilitate that phone call. In collaboration with DAJD, the Department of Juvenile and Adult Detention, that phone number is posted next to every telephone. And if you are in the jail and you need help, you pick up the phone and you call and you reach an attorney with the King County Department of Public Defense. In the rest of the nation, public defenders' offices are still trying to figure out how they would even possibly do what it is that you have allowed us to do, and of which I am so proud and our attorneys are so proud. Also, with the continued support of King County and KCIT, you'll note in this report the vast number of statistics at the end of the report. That's all a result of us becoming a King County department and being provided IT services on par, if you will, with the prosecutor's office and the courts who can provide you those statistics. We are working our way towards being able to give you every statistic that they give you from our own behalf. We've created a training program. Now, the four not-for-profits, some of them trained, some of them sent people to training here. Since 2015, we have created a training team within the Department of Public Defense. Every lawyer that is hired out of law school is put through training. Every attorney is taught the same things. They come through trial schools, so we know and they know that they are confident in their ability to represent their clients in the courtroom. In the last year, some of the things that we are so proud of that we have partnered with this council on, the passage of Miranda warnings for juveniles, written specifically so that they can understand what it is the police officers are saying to them. The not allowing police officers to interrogate juveniles in our detention facilities here in King County without having first been offered an attorney. With the assistance of performance strategy and budget and the support of the executive, we have implemented a graduating hiring class. So here in King County, beginning the third year for law students, we post and we are able to interview and offer positions actually, that would not start until after graduation for law students, so that we are able to attract, recruit, and hire not only the best lawyers here in the Seattle area, from Seattle University, University of Washington, but from around the country. We are working diligently to increase the diversity of our attorney staff. While our diversity across the department is on par with the rest of King County, our higher paying jobs for attorneys, it's not on par. This is going to require us and is requiring us, and we're stepping up to the plate to find ways to recruit diverse attorneys. Our goal is to one day be able to have our attorneys look just like the clients that we represent.
Did you mean to say that?
I did mean to say that, Your Honor. I did.
You almost called me Your Honor.
I did. You can tell I used to be a trial lawyer.
Yeah.
Yes, I did say that because
Can I tell you why I said what I said?
Yes.
Most of the time when I'm out there and people are talking about diversity, they say we want our workforce to reflect King County. So King County is 7% African American, and that's their goal. I just want to know if you're aware that it's 35 to 40% of the men and women in our King County adult jail are African American men and women. Is that what you meant to say?
It is exactly what I meant to say. I'm very aware of that number.
Okay.
And I think as a added part of the role that we play in our county government, it's imperative that the people that we are working with can see themselves in us. If somebody sees themselves in us, then it makes it much more believable for them to think that one day they or their children or their neighbor could also become a lawyer, could also become somebody that works at the Department of Public Defense, that could enter the pipeline to higher paying jobs here in King County. So you will note in our report, the one place that saddens me the most about our department is what I'm going to call the elusive employee happiness. As you are,
I need to ask our staff, what page is this, or her report in our packet?
It starts, council member, on page 47. And so when I,
all right, I'm with you.
Okay, when I mention the employee happiness or employee satisfaction, this is something that has concerned me from the day that I've come in the door here into King County. As you're aware of the history, we brought together 4 not-for-profits. While they all and we share the same goal of trying to help clients, we have a long history of those 4 not-for-profits competing with one another. They also, many did not want to become King County employees. And part of the reason I was hired for this job was to try and unify this group. And it's very difficult. It's difficult work, and it's not anything that we're giving up on. I mean, we have and we continue to do listening tours, bring in facilitators and various things to try and figure out exactly the best way to create a healthy department of employees that are not separated by folks that were here before the merger and folks that are here after the merger, or any other division by our 4 divisions or otherwise. I want to tell you the marked improvement that I've seen, or the marked progress I have seen. When I came, I first sat down with people from the 4 divisions and asked them about training, and they didn't want to train together. They wanted to continue to train in their separate divisions. We now have a full-blown training department where lawyers from all the divisions come together and we train each other and we share what we know. When we first got here, we were spread all over the county. With your great help and the leadership of the Executive and Facilities Maintenance Division, at the end of this week, we will all in Seattle be in one building. And that has so facilitated our ability to really unify and come together. So I'd next like to turn to some things that I think we have to continue our forward march. One is an increase for the rate paid to assigned counsel. While the council and the executive and everyone has been quite mindful of parity between the prosecutors and the public defenders that are employees, our assigned counsel have been left in the cold. I believe that I may have spoke of this last year, but in southern Indiana, I was making on misdemeanor cases an assigned attorney $95 an hour. That's a place where you can buy a very large house with 15 acres for $300,000. Here in King County, you can't even buy a house in Seattle for $300,000. This is going to require your attention. You will see it in our budget proposals, and it's my strong hope that the executive will be supporting that. We need to pay our interns. Part of our pipeline to bringing in diverse employees to the Department of Public Defense is through an internship program every summer. It's our understanding that the prosecutor's office and many of the other departments in King County pay their interns, and we are requesting in a budget package this year that we be provided funding to do that also. We also need, if you will look at page 64 in your packet or page 16 of the materials, you'll find a reference to the Washington Defender, Washington State Bar Association standards. When we created the staffing model, I'm going to try not to get too far into the weeds here. Yeah. When we created the staffing model, which is how we generate how many attorneys we need to do the work, it was based in large part on the culture of how the not-for-profits and performance strategy and budget determined how many attorneys you should have, how many investigators and social workers. And it had long time been the agreement or understanding that if an attorney was handling a calendar position, so for instance, you mentioned earlier Superior Court's drug court. For us, the attorneys that handle those cases are calendar attorneys, and they are not included in the numbers of attorneys when you factor out how many investigators and legal assistants we need. Although that has been the long-term practice here in King County, it's not supported by the Washington standards. I bring this to your attention now because as we go forward with more and more video from body-worn video cameras that police officers are wearing, from the cameras in the cars that are pulled over from any crime scene and DUIs, it is increasing the amount of time that our investigators and our legal assistants must spend uploading those documents, those files, reviewing those files. So it's my belief that if we could staff according to these standards and do away with this old agreement, that we could much better absorb that increase. And you'll see that in our upcoming budget proposals too. And I'd like to call out Councilmember Lambert. She and I were on a group late last year or mid last year where we were trying to address what goes on in courtroom 1201 and the lack of space. And that's something I have to continue to call out. It is not what the ABA standards require for our attorneys. They need to have space to talk to clients when they're behind the holding cells in 1201. They need to be able to have places besides standing in the hallway to talk to clients. And so I know that I believe Superior Court recently sent counsel and the executive a letter asking for assistance in providing some sort of support to 1201 to correct that, and DPD supports that 100%, along with changes to what we call KCJ1 and KCJ2, which are courts that are held in the jail. Now let me pause here and say I am not for a minute suggesting or asking that you build a new jail. I'm just asking that we come up with some ways to make those places better functioning. And I think that Councilmember Lambert had some great ideas when she brought this up last year. So looking forward to the next period of time, one of the things that I'm very excited about is partnering with the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office to come up with a way to vacate the drug possession convictions of the 80s and 90s. Mr. Satterberg and I have met. We have both of our staffs working on that to try and figure out how can we legally get those convictions vacated, those convictions that so often prevent our clients from getting employment and keeping housing. With that, I will conclude my report and am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Youngcourt. That was a very comprehensive, and at least for me, because I deal a lot with people who are intersecting with the criminal justice system here in King County, very educational. So I want to first thank you for that. But before I turn to the questions I have, I'd like to check with my colleagues to see that any of them have any questions. You did? Okay, go ahead.
I have a couple quick questions. Good
All
to
right.
see you again. I think you and I should take a hammer and go fix it ourselves.
Amen.
That would be wonderful. So on page 54, it said the executive has instructed DPD not to renew its annual contract if the state does not provide full cost recovery.
Yes, ma'am.
So what about that? The state's pretty much told us to take a flying leap. So what is that going to mean?
So this is specific to the 7109 representation, which is the what many people refer to as the sexually violent predator statute, which allows so once a defendant has served his entire sentence, the state may bring an action to have him civilly or her civilly committed indefinitely. We have been providing that representation since the passage of 7109. And also here in King County, the prosecutor's office does that work. Around the rest of the state, it's performed by contract workers through the Office of Public Defense, the State Office of Public Defense, and the Attorney General's office. Mr. Satterberg and I both believe so strongly in this body of work that we prefer to have it be our attorneys. These were our clients to begin with. So these are all King County clients. They are all people who were convicted here in King County that the state has decided should be civilly committed. So what I know about King County and performance strategy and budget is that there is no formula, adopted formula for how we determine total cost recovery. We have calculated this out. We believe that in the worst or in the best case scenario, King County is supporting this work to the tune of about $120,000 a year. I'm working with Joanne Moore of the Office of OPD, Office of Public Defense, to try and find ways that we can supplement what the state pays, short of asking them to pay King County something different than they pay the rest of the state, which seems to be the big block for our state funders. While you and I think everybody in King County understands that the cost of living is significantly different here, that is not how the funding is appropriated for the state.
So I thought one of our 4 agencies had that body of work.
They do. We do right now. So
what happens to them if we don't take that body of work?
Well, if we don't take that body of work, I will do my very best. Let me say this. Those are all very senior attorneys because I can't have folks right out of law school doing that body of work. You have to have a lot of experience. So these are all very senior attorneys who have longevity within our union. They would be certainly staying, and I would do everything I could not to have to do a layoff. Worst case scenario, if we did have to do layoffs, it would be with our youngest attorneys.
Unfortunately, we called a special meeting right during the OPD board meeting, so I won't be able to go to the OPD board meeting to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, and the other question, as we go forward, will you be able to provide us documentation and showing why our costs per felony and our costs for different kinds of cases is different from our comparable counties?
Councilmember, I'm so glad you've asked me that question because we struggle with this one. We have been on the phone and in consultation with the State Office of Public Defense, and here's a few things that we know. While they provide a form for each county to fill out, the directions on how to fill out that form do not provide any assurance that what we are reporting would be the same thing that another county is reporting. So I have my data and research analyst working on this so that we can try and provide an answer. I mean, I could give you anecdotal things such as here in King County, the way we do our budgeting. So for instance, our contribution to KCIT out of our budget is quite significant, in the tune of $1 million+. Other counties do not count that in their budgeting when they are determining what a case costs. Our benefits in King County are significantly better than they are in other counties. So I'm trying to get a spreadsheet together for you that will show what it is that we're counting that they're not counting. But at the end of the day, I think if we both were reporting exactly the same things, we would be much closer. And then also when counties are doing their public defense work through contracting, and they are in communities with lower costs of living, they're certainly not necessary to pay their attorneys as much as we do.
And you told me that before, so when I went back and looked at the statewide data, I picked Pierce, Snohomish, and Spokane for the very reasons you just said.
Right.
And there's still a huge dichotomy. Yes. So I think I'd like to, because we are going to have more costs and we're going to be $25 million short. So if we could shorten the gap between what somebody spends in Snohomish County from what we spend here, that would help us make the gap.
Okay. So I will be providing that spreadsheet as soon as I can get the materials together. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
I had a question on the training of new lawyers. I like the fact that all of them have to go through a set of training modalities that your leadership organizes to prepare them to take on clients as misdemeanants, alleged misdemeanants, and felony offenders. But my question is, how do you know they got through that and they're well trained? Is there a test, verbal or written?
So we don't actually make them take an additional bar examination administered by the King County Department of Public Defense. What we do though, is our union contracts and our structure of the department requires supervision of every attorney. So every attorney has a supervisor, and those supervisors are supervising no more than 10 attorneys at one time. So the supervisors are very aware of and often are participating in and helping with the training. They then are required to go to court with our attorneys. They sit second chair with these new attorneys to make sure that they are actually implementing the skills and the learning that we have provided. They are also taking professional development reviews 2 times a year, where the supervisor is going through their job expectations, observing them in court, receiving feedback from prosecutors, from judges, from other attorneys within our office as to whether or not our attorneys are meeting those standards. So while we are not doing testing, we're doing a great deal to ensure that we are providing the quality defense that King County expects.
Okay. And my last question is I liked what you said about the efforts we're making to make sure everyone knows that they have a right to an attorney, but I still go to the jail a lot. I mean, some of the jail guards said, you really are over here a lot, Councilman Gossett, talking to constituents and family members of constituents of mine. And a lot of them still say, Mr. Gossett, how can I get a lawyer? And they've been in there 2, 3, 4 days. So offline at the end of this meeting, I would like for you to at least let me have that phone number that they can call so I can also help them to get it. I need a lawyer, a line where they can call, or I can have somebody on my staff call to try to hook them up with somebody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other final questions? All right. What do we have to do in relationship to this report?
This
This is just a briefing. Okay.
No action required.
All right. Very good report, Lorinda.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you and your staff to implement even more efficiently many of the ideas that you've shared with us about how you're trying to improve your operations. How many public defenders do we have right now?
Well, the entire office, including our temporary employees, is about 415. That includes folks that are temporary staff helping us move our divisions into the one building.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wendy, how close are we to being on the last agenda item?
That was it.
That was it. Okay, I'd like to really thank my colleagues and Wendy, our staff, for your patience in helping us get through a very difficult and challenging yet informative agenda this afternoon. And with all of that, we are adjourned.